webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. David, are there any citizen concerns?
There is one.
Sure, please.
Calling user, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure, Karen.
Hi, it's Karen from Acton, and I have a little bit of an announcement. Legends Cafe, through a generous donor, is offering free lunches. I think there's 25 or 50, I can't remember. There's donors coming, more donors than takers. If you would like a fresh meal made for you, healthy food at Legend Cafe in West Acton, the number is 978-635-5315. And if you have more than you need, we'll donate to the free lunch campaign over there. And also, Legend is cutting up to offer a box where people can donate winter items like scarves, hats, mittens, only coats if they're large, not small stuff, and no boots or pants. And there's a box there. And thank you, Legend, and thank you for letting me know. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Legends. So, for the chair's update, thank you for responding to the additional December meeting that was scheduled for next Monday, December 14th. That's to account for the necessary tax classification we have every December. It wasn't, materials weren't ready for our meeting this evening, and we need to have it by the middle of the month for the vendors to do the necessary follow-up work. In addition, at that meeting, we will get updates from John and Corey York on the numerous public works and infrastructure projects that are being undertaken. That alone should probably take 45 minutes to an hour. In addition to that meeting, I just wanted to close the loop on the Minuteman Regional Vocational Schools sports fields project with the $1.9 million in debt they intend to incur to complete the fields. At the November 24th FinCom meeting, Dr. Burkholm gave a presentation. There was what followed was only one question from the committee. They did not take any formal vote, but there was no objection to the borrowing. So I just wanted to put that on the agenda for the 14th. We are really not required to take any further action, but I just want to formalize that and make sure everyone's clear. For our other agenda items, would either be for the 14th or the 21st. The Acton Housing Authority wanted us to revisit the option agreement with us, so it will depend when Anderson, Nina's associate at Anderson Krieger, will be able to join us either the 14th or the 21st. And then on the 21st, we're going to have a tribute to Steve Anderson, who will be returning from Anderson Krieger at the end of the month. And I've emailed quite a few old selectmen who worked with Steve and old town staff, including Steve Ledoux. And I think we're going to have a nice turnout. It'll be similar to the farewell that John gave for Roland Bartle in October, which was very good. So with that, John, for your manager's update, please.
Thank you. We have a pretty busy night tonight, so I can hold on any updates and have an opportunity to share those a week from tonight. I did want to mention that some new signs are going to be, you'll see these new signs all over town. This is a follow-up from our meeting last week. A nod to Corey York and Cheryl for a minute? Jim?
Sure. A couple things. First of all, by the next time we meet, it'll the first night of Hanukkah will have already happened. So I just wanted to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah. It starts on December 10th. The other thing is that from the Acton Boxborough Cultural Council, they are in the business of giving money away to artists, and they don't have plenty of applications yet. Their deadlines have been extended to December 14th. So if you're out there, you got an idea, make sure to get your application in. And finally, Nancy Corcoran, who some of you know as Ann Corcoran, is leaving the Commission on Disabilities after many years. Her next meeting is her last, and she's been the chair this year, and I just wanted to thank her deeply for all the work she's done for the Commission on Disabilities. And that's it for me.
Okay, Joan? No. David?
Yes, so I just wanted to let you know that the school building project is moving right along. A couple weeks ago, I did a walk around on the site with a couple of the engineers and a few members of the school building committee. There's significant foundation work going on. There was a lot of ledge found on the site. Unfortunately, it just seemed to avoid the places that they dug during the design phase to find ledge and didn't find any. But it was an undulating piece of ledge, and right where they needed to bring in utilities or put the septic tank, that's where the ledge was. So there's been significant ledge removal, and that's eaten away at the contingencies quite a bit. However, some of the bids are starting to come in, and some of those are coming in a little bit lower than expected. So that's good. Hopefully these things will balance themselves out, but we won't know until I think next week's when most of the bids are in.
Thank you. Dean?
Nothing from me.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes. We're at 7:08. So let me just go through the consent items. That should get us to 7:10. So consent item 13, approved meeting minutes from November 6th and 23 of 2020. 14, approved executive session minutes October 29th, 2020. 15, approved 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting schedule. 16, accept gift facilities division $885 from Suburban Glass and Mirror Company for a donation of plexiglass guard public safety facility. 17, accept gift Acton Police Department for $5,000 to support effort in providing programs and services that make a difference in the community. 18, accept gift Acton Fire Department for $5,000 to support effort in providing programs and services that make a difference in the community. John, it's not the same. Looks like it's identical to 17.
One's police, one's fire.
Oh, one is fire. That is fire. I'm sorry. Yes, Acton Fire Department. Yes, okay. Fire Department, $5,000 to support effort in providing programs and services that make a difference in the community. 19, accept gift Recreation Department for $100 from John Joseph Holmes for funding a new recreation facility and playground in Pepper Field. 20, accept gift Recreation Department for $20 from John, $200 from John Sonner for funding a new recreation facility and playground in Jones Field. 21, accept gift Recreation Department for $250 from Acton Critter Sitters to be used for constructing a dog park in Acton. 22, accept gift Recreation Department for $40 for Anonymous to be used for constructing a dog park. 23, accept gift Recreation Department for $25 from Nancy Barnes to be used for constructing a dog park in Acton. Do I have a motion to approve consent items 13 through 23 inclusive? Joan, is there a second?
Second.
Second. So David, if you just call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner? Mr. Charter? Aye. Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay, so thank you. So we are at 7:11. We have two hearings ahead of us this evening. Let me read the public hearing notice for the first hearing, public hearing notice, Town of Acton. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on December 7, 2020 at 7:10 p.m. This hearing was continued from November 16th, 2020, virtually on Zoom, https://zoom.us/forward/zoom.us/j/50398918785 on the application of Old Mill Development Trust for a site plan special permit number 092820-480 under zoning bylaw section 10.4 at 67 Powder Mill Road, map 13, parcel 59-6. The application and accompanying plans can be expected at the Planning Division office in Town Hall during normal business hours. For information on how to participate remotely and to view the application materials, go to http://doc.acton-mass.gov/ds-web-b/view/connection-12777. So, with that, I would like to call on the permit seeker, Mr. Leo Bertolami of Acton, to make his presentation on his mixed-use development proposal.
Good evening. My name is Molly Ubendorf. I will be presenting on behalf of Leo Bertolami, who is the owner and the applicant of the subject property, which is located at 67 Powder Mill Road. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the property is at 67 Powder Mill Road. It's shown here in the striped hatching. It does have frontage on Powder Mill Road. However, access will be gained through Sudbury Road and coming up through the existing parking lot of the Human Services and Senior Center. There is an existing 24-foot wide right-of-way easement that exists within that parking lot here. So we will be utilizing that for access to the property. And the applicant has submitted a site plan special permit for a mixed-use building on site. The mixed-use building consists of 4 residential units that are 2 bedrooms each, and a small office space on the ground floor. This plan has undergone a thorough technical review for stormwater as well as the site layout. And all of the area within the lighter green color, that's the area that will ultimately be developed and the extent of disturbance as well. So the darker green area will remain undisturbed. And we're minimizing the extent of the grading and disturbance and clearing by use of retaining walls. So just looking at the contouring here, it's an extremely difficult site. And we're placing the building, basically notching it in the hill there, and then providing these retaining walls in order to minimize the disturbance. There's a parking lot in the front to provide spaces for all uses of the building. Stormwater is shown here. There are 3 subsurface infiltration beds, one of which will infiltrate all of the parking lot runoff, one of which will infiltrate all of the roof runoff, and then one of which will infiltrate a majority of the open space runoff. And like I said, the stormwater has undergone a thorough review by a peer reviewer, GCG Associates, and we're confident that their comments about the plan will be addressable with the revised plan set. And one of the comments that they had that I will touch upon because it was brought up by other departments mention that we did have a technical review with the town departments last week, which was helpful. We met with our department, fire, planning, Board of Health. All the department heads were there to discuss the project, and several of the departments had comments about access from the parking lot to the back of the building. And I'll go back over to the grading plan. Hopefully, I'm not giving you guys whiplash here. Let me know if I am. So, obviously, the drop in elevation from the parking lot to the back is about 20 feet. So the means of access to the back is a set of stairs, and there are landings throughout. Also, for easier maintenance for this particular subsurface drywall, we've provided another set of stairs from the parking lot as well. And then another comment that was brought up by several departments was outdoor space for the residential units. Because it is a 4-story building in the back. Okay. So this is the view from the back. So the only outdoor space really was at the ground level, where there's a small flat area. So we've actually gone ahead and revised. I've spoken with the architects, and we revised the plan to include decks, outdoor decks, 5x10 decks for the residential units to provide them with outdoor space. And we have shown spots for snow storage. And also another major concern that was brought up by a lot of departments was the safety of the residents as well as visitors and anyone coming and entering from the Human Services and Senior Center building. And because we would be using the existing parking lot. So what we've done is provide a stop sign when exiting the property. So the car will actually stop and will slow down. And then we've also provided, there was a concern about overflow parking into the existing parking lot adjacent. So we have proposed a no parking beyond this point sign that's right there at the entrance. And for additional provided safety measures, we are proposing a slow pedestrian crossing sign, which will hopefully address a lot of the concerns that some of the abutters had about the development. And other than that, like I said, the comments and all that are, everything is feasible to be addressed with the revised plan. And I will open it up to questions or comments from the board.
Okay, we'll do questions and comments from the board first, and then we'll take citizen comments. Jim, would you want to start? This was, you were the selectman assigned to this project.
Sure. Let me take a minute to get my questions ready. If someone wants to go first, it's going to take me a minute to
Okay, David.
find my questions.
Sure. I have questions ready. So my first question is why is the site plan special permit necessary in this case?
It's a multi-use dwelling or multi-use building.
Okay. And some of these questions, Molly, are not necessarily for you. So my understanding is that the space through the parking lot for access to this building is 24 feet wide. That's a little bit narrow, I think, especially considering that people will be backing out into that space. I think that's a little problematic for something that's essentially used as a road. I was wondering, and John Mangiarotti, and I don't really, can the town establish traffic rules in that space and the police enforce them? I'm guessing not, right? Because it's private property.
Yeah, it's
does this project include any monies for improvements to that to allow for more safety in the parking lot area? That is a question maybe for you, Molly.
I'm sure the applicant would be amenable to discussing some of those options. If there's any additional signage that the board would like to see in the adjacent parking lot, I'm sure we can discuss that with the applicant.
Well, it's not just signage. Other projects in this area have made other contributions to infrastructure, and so maybe that's something we want to discuss. And I do have a couple questions for you, Molly. The number of parking spaces in here, it's a little bit hard to tell from your diagram that's on the screen now.
Sure. So we have 9 total spaces, which in the Powder Mill District, you're allowed to provide 70% of the required spaces. So on this site, 70% of the required spaces is 8.4, and so we've provided 9 spaces to comply with that requirement.
So as a practical matter, though, this seems problematic to me. I think that number of spaces is a huge problem. I would have thought, 2 for each apartment and several for each business in this property. So I don't know. I think that's a problem in and of itself. I have one more question. Oh, where's the septic system in this development?
Yep. So the septic is right up in front here. So it is private on-site septic. It will be utilizing a Presby system, and then the septic tank chamber.
So the leaching field is under the parking lot, and the tank also is under the parking lot?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had, John.
Sure. Thank you, David. Jim?
Okay, so to take a step back, I just wanted to remind my fellow board members that part of agreeing to a special permit is we have to certify the mandatory findings that are required for a special permit. I just wanted to read one of them. The entry language is the special permit granting authority, that's us in this case, shall not issue a special permit unless, without exception, it shall find that the proposed use, and then it lists a few uses, and I think the most important one in this case for us to discuss is 10353, which is will not be detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood in which it is to take place. So I think a certain part of our focus is going to have to be on the safety issues. So I'll have more to say about that in a minute, but I just wanted to make people aware that that is in fact part of our scope of what we're supposed to determine. The other question I had is about the peer review done by GCG was very technical. I certainly can't say that I understood it all. What I did see was many clauses of issues and concerns. So I think what we've heard from you, Molly, is that you're confident that your new plans meet the concerns addressed by GCG. But I would like to have I'd like to know either from our planning staff or from the peer reviewer that indeed the new plans have addressed those concerns. So maybe that's a question for John, for Town Manager John Mangiarotti. Is there a way that as the planning staff looked at the new plans, is the planning staff able to look at the new plans, or is this a sort of a technical point that we should bring in the peer reviewer again to look at?
Certainly the planning, Kristen Guichard, interim planning and zoning director, is here and has reviewed the updated plans and is available to speak if the chair would like.
Sure, please. Kristen?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me all right? Oh, good morning. Good afternoon.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So with site plans, oftentimes, if there are no really significant issues that the engineering either department or in this case the engineering consultant reviewer GCG has identified, they'll mention everything that needs to be updated. And what you could do as a board and have done in the past is either condition those items to be included prior to plan endorsement as part of a decision, or you could require them to be updated now and brought back at a continued public hearing until the plans are 100% absolutely perfect. That really isn't typically the way that the board has operated in the past, but it doesn't mean you can't do it now and tonight. But when I did speak with GCG, I did ask them if any of the things that they've identified were, engineering items that would require site design or modification and not be able to accomplish the same thing that you're seeing on the site today, like the location of the building, the number of parking spaces, and still meet all of the other regulations for stormwater and so forth. And they said that no, nothing was really substantial and everything could be met. They just needed to be made. The changes need to be made. So that's where we are. So it's really up to the board. You could say you want everything perfect now, and then a decision's made and there's no conditions in the decision whatsoever in terms of plan modifications, or you could have plan modifications in a decision. It's really up to the board.
Thank you, Kristen. Jim?
Yeah, I'd happily ask a follow-up question if I could.
Please.
Does the draft decision that you wrote, does it explicitly list all the concerns that were brought up by GCG, or do we need a modified draft decision to be looking at?
So we could list every single item. What we typically do is kind of like a disclaimer condition that says it has to meet all of the conditions in their memo. We do that also with sometimes we do that with like the water department as well. We'll say they need to comply with all of the conditions or comments set forth in water department's comments or other reviewing comments as well. We do that with sometimes. So it's up to you. We can absolutely itemize everything or not.
Okay, thanks. It'd be a great item for us to discuss. Another question I had, I think for Molly, was about the office space that's there, the 800 square feet. I think if that's the right size. My impression, which I wanted to check out with you, was that this was not a site that was going to be receiving customers. It looks like there would be some additional ADA issues, perhaps, with the design of the entrances and the inside space, if it was going to be receiving customers. So I wanted to check with you about what the plan was for that space.
Sure. Yeah. There isn't a plan exactly per se, but it would more or less be a 1 or 2 man team in that office to just use that space and not necessarily have, like you said, customers coming in and out. Fairly small office space, but it is ADA compliant. With the way that the grade works out, the finished floor is at 209, and the entrance for the office is over on the left side here. So but no steps would be required to get into that entrance. So it is ADA compliant, and the parking lot itself is also ADA compliant.
Yeah, it looks like you widened the handicap space as requested by the planning department. Is that true?
Yeah, that will most likely be part of the revised plans. Yes.
Oh, okay. So what we're seeing on the screen is sort of a progress towards revised plans, or?
Yes, and most of the major things that you'll actually physically see on the plan are included on this presentation plan right now, like the outdoor spaces, the access to the back, and those are really the 2 major things that need to be shown on the plan. So most of it is just kind of buttoning things up and cleaning things up.
Yeah, it looked like there might be some technical changes to the way the wastewater is handled, at least if I was reading the GCG memo properly. Okay, so let's go back. I think this is a question for John next. So we did see a letter from the owner of 30 Sudbury, or at least his representatives. And one thing I didn't quite understand from that letter was if we determine that it seems like that to make the place safe enough, we're not only going to need changes on the at the new site at 67 Powder Mill, but also potentially at 30 Sudbury, in the entrance and signage and all that. And I was wondering if you'd had any conversations with Chip or or other reps from the 30 Sudbury about an ability and a willingness to work with the town and the proponent on safety measures on the 30 Sudbury part.
Yes, thank you. I did have a conversation with Chip Orcutt, who runs the leasing company that we leasing the building from. He did mention, and I would agree, I guess, that he's a good landlord and he'll do whatever needs to be done to help us utilize our facility. But to what extent changes need to be made, I think we don't know yet. But he certainly acknowledges that there may be a need to make some changes based on how we use that facility and what this building or what this project may change about how we use this facility.
Thank you. One question that was raised both in a couple of letters, including the note from Chip Orcutt, was about the staging during construction. And I wondered if Molly could speak to that, about how the site is going to be arranged so that construction trucks and materials will be on site without occupying space at 30 Sudbury.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. So all vehicles, all the construction equipment will remain on site. The owner of the property owns several other properties in the area as well that have ample parking. So if there's any overflow, from workers parking or vehicles and stuff like that, they can park on his other properties. And everything will remain within the property. There will be no overflow into the adjacent parking lot. So staging will all be on site. Mm-hmm. And stockpiling of materials, same thing. If he needs additional storage area, he can use another one of his properties. So there are lots of options for that, certainly.
Great, thank you. I think that's all I had for now. I think as selectmen, we can have a more detailed discussion about safety, but I think I've asked the questions I have for now.
Thank you, Jim. Joan?
Joan, your computer is muted. You're not muted in Zoom. Now you're muted in Zoom as well. Now you're unmuted in Zoom.
I can contact Joan if that helps.
Okay, so let me then go. I'm going to go to Dean then. Dean, for your comments and questions.
Yeah, a couple of points. The applicant did meet with the design review board last week and went over a number of issues with the building, and it was sort of a design as you go situation. DRB made some suggestions and the architect said that he'd work on them. I think a desire would be for the design review board to get another shot at the plans that have been modified. I'm reasonably sure that these latest architecturals are not something they've had a chance to see yet. I think it looks like they've addressed some of the concerns raised by the DRB, but I do think it's important that DRB be given another opportunity to weigh in on this. That's one point. Second point that I would have, again, on safety, that's really paramount, is safety for the folks that are using 30 Sudbury Road. I would suggest that maybe at the entrance to this development, in addition to the signage, they consider putting either a speed bump or a rumble strip or something like that on there just to sort of reinforce the signage. I think that would be really important and could probably help. Also, perhaps something that we could do with our landlord is some additional signage at the entrance of the 30 Sudbury Road parking lot where it comes in from Sudbury Road. So there'll be some additional warning signs there, just so that if somebody is just going to visit a resident of this new development, they understand that they're going through a parking lot that's used by folks with mobility and sight and hearing impairments. So I think, whether the developer pays for that or whether we pay for it, I think that's something that certainly needs to be considered. Certainly issues between our landlord and this property owner to make sure that our landlord is not unduly impacted by this development. And one other item that I noticed when I was up there the other day, and then it was brought to the fore by Chip Orcutt's letter, I think it's important that the Tennessee gas transmission line that runs across this part of this property be clearly identified. This is a very, very large and high pressure line that certainly want to make sure that it's clearly identified and that there be no intrusion whatsoever into that. One of the other questions that I would have is, for the utilities going into this building, gas, water, electricity, I presume that that's going to go across the 30 Sudbury Road property. I'd be interested to know, is it going to go into the parking lot in the easement, or is it going to go adjacent to it, or is it going to go overhead? All of those things would certainly have a lot of impact on certainly the condition of the parking lot that our folks are going to be using and that our landlord has to maintain. So I'd like to get some clarification on utility access from Molly. And that's about it at this point from me.
Molly, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the utilities are shown on here. We have underground wires for electric and natural gas, which are running up the easement and then onto the property. So that was the plan. And then we had shown a water service from Town Water originally. Then the water department stated that it would be a 500-foot extension for the main, which can become unfeasible sometimes. So we have actually proposed a private on-site well to provide the water to the building. But the underground electric and the underground gas will still be run up through the easement and then onto the property that way. And I will also like to speak to, you mentioned a speed bump or a rumble strip. Part of the technical review last week, I do believe the fire chief said he'd prefer not to have a speed bump, but I think a rumble strip is worth the discussion with the applicant to provide those added safety measures. I would also like to say that the traffic impact to and from this site will be negligible, if that. I think we had pulled up the numbers last week at the technical meeting, and I'll pull them up again. These numbers are based on lots and lots of studies that have been done. And so we are well below the peak hour max traffic flow to require a traffic study. We're under 5 trips in a peak hour, and a peak hour is during rush hour in the morning and during rush hour in the evening. And what we do from those two numbers is we take the highest one, and we use that number to provide our traffic count. Similarly, with the daily trips, we look at and see which trip count is the highest, and then implement that. And it's well below the 400 trip threshold. So I'm not saying there aren't going to be cars going in and out, but I am saying that there will be very few cars going in and out, which will help with the safety aspect of it. There aren't going to be constant cars going in and out of that property.
Okay, Dean?
Yeah, just as a follow-up from Molly, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the building as proposed is going to have a sprinkler system, fire suppression sprinkler system in the building.
That's correct.
And I believe that allayed some of the issues that the fire department had with the lack of any kind of access to the rear of the building.
Correct.
I guess my follow-up question is, what's the situation with using an on-site well to supply a fire suppression sprinkler system? Do you need generator backup? Do you need reservoir cistern? I guess I need to know to make sure that the fire suppression has been integrated with the site utilities properly.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we will consult a fire engineer about that. We have a consultant that we've worked with in the past and has been very good. So, we'll take this project to him and see what he proposes. I'm not sure what that would be, but it could either be storage or, a pump in the well or something, but he'll propose something that is manageable and won't affect the site in a drastic manner, or if at all. So that will be included in the design if we do end up going with the well water.
I would imagine that if you're going to rely on town water, in addition to the length of the line, the main that would have to be extended, you'd probably end up having to put a fire hydrant adjacent to the building as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. If we did end up extending the water main up the road and then having a water service to the property, we would have a hydrant on site.
Okay. Thank you.
Dean, anything further?
No,
Joan?
No.
Joan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Joan's question. We're still working on some technical stuff with IT, but her question was to the applicant, why was the access for this project not Powder Mill Road if it has frontage?
Yeah. So there's a lot of resource areas back there. This is all floodplain. So we have the Assabet River here, and the property cuts down right down the middle of the Assabet River. And then this is all within floodplain. This is all wetland. So providing access from Powder Mill Road would have been virtually undoable. And this is a much better way for both the environment and ease of construction to provide the access through the existing right-of-way easement.
Okay. Are there any other questions in this round? Questions or comments from board members? David.
Just to follow up with the town manager, John, you alluded to earlier that it might, depending on what happened with this project, it might change the way we use 30 Sudbury. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, I just mean that right now we have a facility there that's used by seniors and other users of human services. And if you're looking at the site plan that Molly has up, people park right where the word proposed electric telephone cable service is currently, and then they walk to the facility. They also park on the on the Concord side of the parking lot. And if there's going to be a throughway there that's actively used, we may want to revisit how the layout of that parking and throughway is. But those are discussions that we haven't really had yet because we don't know what we're dealing with at this point.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions from board members? Jim?
Just a minor correction. I had mentioned a section of the zoning bylaw, and a nice rapid text from town council has pointed me instead towards 10.3.6.5, which is the part that allows a special permit, site plan special permit, allows us to regulate access, drives, and traffic features, which are the parts that we're talking about here in terms of trying to create safety there. The other question I had was from a couple of groups asked us about if we continue to stay concerned, as I am, about the notion of cars driving through 30 Sudbury. Molly, I wonder if you could comment about either the physical, legal, or financial implications of trying to connect here more through from the Concord side, from the Concord Muse side, to avoid all or most of the 30 Sudbury area.
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer your question fully, but entering from the Concord side isn't all that feasible. And the legal aspect of it, I'm not sure how that would be handled. We'd have to, I think, either obtain an easement or, buy a piece of property from Concord. There is a development that is a little bit northeast of this site in Concord. That's a private development, and I think they would have similar concerns, with traffic and, people coming in and out of there. But I will reiterate that the traffic volumes are negligible here, and the traffic counts for both residential and office space have been provided in the application, and they're well below any requirement for any traffic study. And the fact that there is an existing 24 right-of-way easement, that's the best way to go. There isn't any additional paving that's required for the access. The legal aspect is already there. And I do think that we can work with the town and the lessor and the owner to provide those safety measures that are of such concern for the abutters as well as the board members. And we want to make sure that those residents and visitors of that property feel safe, driving into that property. So we are certainly willing to discuss and work with the town on those added safety measures for that parking lot.
Thanks.
Further follow-up questions from board members? Okay, so let's then go to the citizen comment portion of the hearing, and I'd like to start it this way. First, we'll hear from the Council of Aging Board. It'll be a three-part presentation by Ellen Feinsand, who's chair, Bonnie Lobel, and Sharon Mercurio. And then we'll go to a presentation from the Commission on Disabilities, which will be by Ann Corcoran. I'm not sure whether Jeff Burkett will be joining in. And then after that presentation, I'd like to hear from Joan Burrows, and then we'll open it up to others who wish to comment. So Ellen, if you would perhaps lead off for the Council of Aging Board.
So Sharon, unmute yourself.
Would you like me to start? This is Sharon.
Oh,
Well, I think Ellen was planning to start, if I'm correct.
Ellen has two connections. Come on.
Do you want me to stop sharing my screen if there's going to be...
I don't have access. I don't have access.
Okay, Ellen, we can hear you now.
You do? You hear me scream? You can? All right. Bye. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about the special permit request. Again, I'm Ellen Feinsand as chair representing the Council on Aging Board. Acton seniors represent approximately 25% of its residents. Decisions on things associated with seniors should be made with senior consciousness by the board and by the town, taking into account their unique needs. Many seniors struggle with social isolation. The senior center users thrive doing in-person activities because many live alone. This is a very important part of their lives. The COA board anticipates growing use of the senior center once the current restrictions on in-person activities are lifted. The town must be mindful of seniors' slower reaction time, vision and hearing impairment, and a walking pace that could put extra traffic, making their safety at risk. We are here tonight to express our concerns that the 67 Powder Mill Road project with access through the parking area of 30 Sudbury Road is dangerous for Acton's seniors. The comment about the traffic study, while interesting, is not relevant to a special use building like the senior center and human resource building. Starting with the construction vehicles and debris, sure, things can be located in other locations, but I can't believe nothing will have to be driven up through the parking lot in the construction work. Two-way traffic, it will take place all day. There are seniors coming and going from the 30 Sudbury Road building all day. It doesn't mean rush hour. It's not the same as a standard parking lot. So the studies would have to be done relevant specifically to this kind of use and ongoing parking requirements. I think on the face of it, it's remarkable to me that the rules are that only 70% of needed spaces are required. Okay, you have said that there are going to be 4 two-bedroom units and a commercial space that will probably just have 2 workers, no customers. That's pretty interesting, but that equals more than 8 spaces and a handicap space. That is entirely inadequate. Before I knew the 70% piece, the issue on access to parking, where seniors may be parking, can cause accidents. The parking arrangements for the project are inadequate for residential and business purposes. Just the math. 2 bedrooms might be 2 cars for each residential unit, and you mentioned maybe there would be just two workers in the commercial unit. So if everybody's car is there and we never have a visitor and we never have a person coming to do work or coming to make repairs, the arrangements pose serious risks to seniors. An example is if one were thinking about a place that is jointly used for parking, which, by the way, 30 Sudbury Road is. It's not just for the senior center, it's for other uses. The overflow and the competition for spaces is just a built-in problem. The issue is, where will business customers and workers park? Where will residential visitors, repair or maintenance workers park? the answer is likely to be 30 Sudbury Road. And the spaces that are at the end of 30 Sudbury Road's parking are all at this time handicapped spaces. So the likely overflow from the new development into the 30 Sudbury Road area is going to be right where all the handicapped spaces are. Who will enforce the boundaries? It's great to have a sign that says stop, but who will enforce the boundaries when there are extra people who come? And when they walk into 30 Sudbury Road and the receptionist at the senior center has to answer their questions about, where is this apartment building? Where am I supposed to go? Why should the senior center reception people have to deal with that? We shouldn't have to compete for spaces. A good example of where this has been a terrific problem is in Concord at the Neshoba Brook Bakery, adjacent to the gas station. There have been accidents. There have been many different barricades put up, and it is now a very dangerous place. So, as proposed, this project would have a substantial detriment to the public good of Acton seniors and their families. This would be a violation of the original variance granted 9 years ago that stated, quote, "The granting of a variance would not have a substantial detriment to the public good," end quote. Now the abutting property is being used as a senior center. We believe that allowing this permit would now be detrimental to the public good and in violation of the variance. We request that you, the select board, vote to defer granting this special permit until appropriate changes are made that address our concerns. The traffic study stated, I do not believe has the assumptions about a special purpose place for parking next door. The issue about coming in from 30 Sudbury Road that Dean mentioned is something that I think we have to all understand, because having signs at the end of the 30 Sudbury Road parking area to and from the new development is okay, but that's not really the problem area. The problem area is coming into 30 Sudbury Road. So I think we must get answers and address our concerns. We cannot wait to solve the problems until after the special permit is issued, and we can scarcely afford the risk of lives of seniors in Acton if we just accept this current situation and issue a special permit for this to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Is Bonnie Lobel prepared to speak?
Yes.
Next. Bonnie, please.
I don't see a Bonnie Lobel in the list.
Does it
Okay.
maybe say Frank Lundberg?
Looking. No, I don't see. I mean, Bonnie, if you'd like to raise your hand, your electronic hand. Oh, Acton Mass Women's Club. Hold on.
Bonnie?
Bonnie, just unmute yourself now. Now you can talk.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that the Acton Human Services Building is essential to the people in our town. The nursing service traces COVID-19 cases and works with the Board of Health to keep us safe. Veteran Services takes care of those who have fought to defend our country. This building is the beating heart of Acton's senior community. Ask us to subsidize a new school, and we step forward gladly. But don't ask us to risk our lives navigating a roadway in order to access services essential to our health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Sharon Mercurio, please.
Hi, thank you. So the variance was granted years back when 30 Sudbury Road rear was truly just the rear of a building. There were no main entrances. When the town rented 30 Sudbury Road, it was redesigned and an entryway was made for access to that rear parking lot. So now it is quite an active parking lot. There are 69 parking spaces. On an average day, the senior center has about 200 visitors coming and going. That's not including staff. That's not including the volunteers and Meals on Wheels drivers or any of the other departments in that building, the nursing service, the community resource coordinator, or the veteran service officer. My concern is that with these parking spots, they're always full. There's a lot of activity, people coming and going, and this easement runs directly through the entire length of this parking lot. I think everybody's really talking about the safety issues, and I appreciate your concern because I have my concerns as well of people trying to cross the parking lot. There are mobility issues, and it's really an unusual access, I'm sorry, to get into a housing development, to drive through an entire parking lot. And I think 38 trips a day to this new development may not sound like a lot to you, Molly, but to us, that's just more chaos coming and going through the parking lot, more people that are trying to cross the way and that sort of thing that could be at risk. Again, my concern is, school buses, delivery trucks, not just the residents coming and going, but all that comes with that as well. I did have a couple of questions, was wondering when the building was planning to start, construction, when that was planned to be, and then, you talked about underground utilities, so will that be disruptive to our parking lot? Will there need to be trenches dug through the easement, which would be really unsafe?
So Molly, would you like to answer Sharon's questions?
Yeah, so the utilities, there will need to be trenches through the parking lot. However, I believe that can be done, in a day, and wouldn't be a huge detriment. It would be a detriment for the day, but once those utilities are installed, then it would be drivable again. And I know it is an unusual access, but this property is a difficult site and it's kind of tucked back, and there's resource areas all around it. So this is really the best option to, provide the access to the property as well as, considering the resource areas around us, and the properties around us. And like I said earlier, we would love to work with the town. We'd love to work with the abutters and the applicant as well to, make sure that these safety concerns are addressed, and everyone feels okay about that. And I hear your concerns about the traffic. It's just a number. What does that mean? But those numbers that we use to provide those traffic counts are very conservative numbers. And I'm not saying that makes it any better, but I am saying that I think you'd be surprised about how little traffic would be going in and out of this building through the parking lot. And, we're willing to work with the signage and anything else to prevent any overflow parking from our property onto the adjacent property. Obviously, we don't want that. So we are certainly willing to work with the neighbors in the town to provide these safety measures and make sure everyone is, on the same page and feels good about this development going in.
Sharon, did you have any follow-up questions to Molly's response?
No, I just wanted to comment. I understand that, this really is probably the best for the developer and the development, but I don't feel that it's the best option for the abutters, the seniors and the residents that are using 30 Sudbury Road. And I am concerned, I think signage is great, but again, I think David brought it up that it's not enforceable because they are two private properties. So that again is another concern that, we can have all the signage in the world, but if it ends up to be a disaster, it's too late. It's there and it's happening and it's already in place. And then how do we go back? But I just wanted to thank you for listening and taking it into consideration.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, for the Commission on Disabilities, and Corcoran.
Just a second, please.
Okay, it says muting on my.
No, we can hear you. Oh, you just muted yourself. You were unmuted.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you. Webinars are a little bit different. Anyway, I just want to make 2 points before I get into my presentation. And one is about traffic. One of the things is, Molly, and I appreciate your sensitive portrayal of the developer's intent, but there will be enormous traffic whether or not he parks his vehicles by the facility that he's building during construction. And to fix our driveway after the installation of the utility services, I guess one day is amazing because we just had a driveway done last fall and it took 3 days to complete. So, and it wasn't a full length of a parking lot. So anyway, I would like now to get to the concerns of Acton's Commission of Disabilities. Our position regarding the use of this right-of-way access through the parking lot at Sudbury Road as an access is a resounding no way. This is a dangerous solution for the developer. The many services provided to Acton residents in this building make it one of town's most active buildings. Veteran services, nursing services, human resource services, the transportation office, and finally, the senior center. The Commission on Disabilities speaks for those many residents of all ages who need support living with physical, mental, and financial challenges. These residents find help from these town services housed at 30 Sudbury Road. The repercussions from COVID-19 will make these service providers even more important to this vulnerable population as they are today, creating even more human traffic navigating the parking lot. Just imagine, please, Molly, a disabled vet struggling across a dangerous parking lot. A young mother attempting to corral her youngsters as she navigates the parking lot with toddlers in tow to get food stamps, rental assistance, or help finding housing. A gentleman recovering from hip surgery, struggling to cross the parking lot with a walker. A woman in a wheelchair, attempting to reach the sidewalk leading to the building entrance safely. Someone with sight, big one, sight or hearing loss, being dependent on those drivers to allow her safely to cross the parking lot. The Commission cannot emphasize clearly and strongly enough that the use of this right-of-way is unsafe and potentially life-threatening. Over the weekend, we generated a set of questions for the select people. I think it would be appropriate for you to hear them now, Molly. My first question is, what town employee signed this lease on behalf of the town? And were they cognizant of the right-of-way at the time of signing? Was this potential hazard communicated at the time of signing to those employees setting up the facility? What entity, town, building owner, or developer will be responsible when a resident is injured in the parking lot at the Human Services building? Can this provision of right-of-way be a deal breaker for the town honoring the lease of this building, as this provision provides a situation that endangers the public? A parking lot is not a road. What options does the town have for terminating their lease because of this inherent danger? And relocating the service building, can the Douglas School be retrofitted to house these services? What was the trigger to start this project, since the right-of-way provision was last activated in 2011? Is the landowner and developer open to finding another access option to this sloped parcel of land, which they intend to develop? In closing, Acton's Commission on Disabilities appeals to our selectmen, the building owner, the developer, to act on this right-of-way request with the overwhelming knowledge that this request, in essence, endangers the safety of the public. Can't be changed. It only takes one driver and one serious mistake. Thank you, Molly, for listening, and again, the select people for hearing my questions a second time. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ann. Is Jeff Burkett going to follow you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think Joan is ready to follow.
Okay, then let's hear from Joan.
Joan Burrows?
Yes.
Are you there, Joan?
Joan, you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm not a computer person, you can tell. Okay. I'm a member of the commission, but I'm not speaking for the commission because Nancy did an eloquent job. I'm just speaking as a member of the community for, let's say, 33 years. I'm a very senior citizen. But I still remember my mother telling me never to accept anything that seems inevitable or harmful, especially if it's harmful to others. And that's how I see this. I will make this very quick because you've had a long time and everyone's expressed what I feel very eloquently. I don't think any signage will help. Ask the police how many people stop for the stop signs even on the main roads, never mind in a parking lot. I don't think speed bumps will help either. But I do hope the board will find a way to prevent this because I do see it as a very, very dangerous situation. And I've lived for a good many years, so I know what a dangerous situation is when I see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, David, would you please take comments from citizens in order as they have their hands raised?
Yeah, John, there's only one person with their hand up currently.
Sure.
Go ahead, please, Tara.
Hi, it's Tara from West Acton. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question, and then I'd like to have a chance to comment after I get my question made. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, so the question is, does this meet the zoning dimensions, the height limits in the zoning district? It's not clear. The peer review was asking this question, so that's my question, and then I'd like to comment.
All right, do you want your question answered first? Kristen?
Hi there. So we did the calculations on the planning end. The calculations for height are taken on basically an average of all sides and the mean of the height of the building, and it does meet the requirements for that zoning district.
Thank you. So may I now give you my comment?
Please, yes.
Okay, so the DRB architects were very perceptive when they commented, and I don't see that this is in the memo, but it looks to be like a play to put to get housing in this parcel that was intended for commercial, and that the mixed use was in fact intended to be mixed use, and that the idea of a commercial entity moving in that's using a senior center parking lot as a throughway just doesn't seem to be within the intent of the bylaws, within the intent of mixed use. I'll move on to comment that Kristen's comment relative to how things have always been done. It's a new world. There's a climate emergency that's called for reducing human impact and deforestation. I heard nobody talking about how this would impact trees. I certainly object to the staff preparing a draft approval before the first hearing when there are letters coming in asking for denials. I think that's disingenuous. The applicant himself has a history of not adhering to what's said in the hearing or the promises made. In fact, not even what's in the plans that were approved. Quite a bit of time was spent on the location of a building by the car wash on two-way, and he put it where he wanted. The best option, that was a phrase that was used for this site, if you presume that this level of profit is a given, it isn't. We have to stop thinking of profit over people and the environment. Town meeting was not informed of the risk that this lease would introduce to the seniors and other vulnerable residents. I agree with the Senior Center and Council on Aging and COD people, and note that we don't want to rely on the developer's paid traffic consultant. I believe we should get the applicant to pay the town so the town can have their own consultant that works in its own interests. We've had people die in parking lots locally, and that is a serious shame, and I don't think we should allow public commercial traffic to use the senior center as a throughway. I urge you to deny this application until the Council on Aging people are satisfied with the proposed disruption. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any further citizen comment?
There's two more. Before I let this person speak, Charlie, please rename yourself to include your last name or put your full name in the chat. I'm going to call on Chip Orcutt now.
Chip?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Chip.
Great. Thank you for all your hard work on this. I believe I heard about this last week and was able to review the plans today. I did get a chance to quickly talk to my engineer and pull him off his project this afternoon. But I did send in a letter of this afternoon with some concerns, having done a lot of construction and worked for the owner for 30 years, including the purchase of this building. I can tell you that this site is extremely difficult, and just by what's usable flat land before you start even the work, I have a lot of concerns on how you're going to get started in construction. The last thing we're going to allow as landlords is tractor trailers and construction vehicles going down to that property and then backing out. So I can see that you're trying to create a flat plateau, Molly, and I believe that that needs to be established with the turnaround for the remainder of the project until you before you can start actually constructing the building, because we will exhaust every legal effort to block construction if trucks and trailers are going to think they're going to go down that road and then back out. That is not the purpose of the right-of-way. It's stated in the actual easement that was recorded at the Registry of Deeds. I've got a lot of concerns. I really do not see anywhere in the easement language that grants you the public utilities that you are trying to infer on your document as proposed, whether that is, currently it shows water, gas, electric, and particularly in light of having the Tennessee transmission line there, which runs out of the 500 feet from the street to the property runs close to 450 feet, right smack in the middle of the easement, and that really needs to be addressed. And I do not believe that that's something that you address after this is signed off in between committees. I think this is a big enough issue, as the residents have already expressed to use this facility, and it just is not something that we're going to allow until we're at a comfort level that pre-construction and then during construction and then post-construction, which the Council of Aging and residents have already expressed. So for that matter, if you're going to continue, I would strongly recommend, as a resident of Acton, also for close to 50 years, that you deny this application based on its merits so far proposed, and for the safety of the citizens in the community. I think that's it. And by the way, we have not been consulted directly on any of this entire project. I haven't even seen the mail that showed that we were notified. I have seen on your list an application that we were mailed, but nothing has been sent down to me from 84 South Street, where the headquarters for this are. And I typically get those. We own multiple properties. I'm not sure why we don't use the green cards anymore, but it is what it is. But I would have thought on a project of this scope that, as you mentioned, trying to be favorable with the abutters, it's disingenuous to say that this project is ready to go and we'll deal with it after we get our permit from the Selectmen. So that's where I stand on this, and I urge the Selectmen to deny this application.
Thank you, Chip. And there's another person.
There's a couple more. Again, Charlie, if you'd like to speak, I need to have you rename yourself to your full name or put your full name in the chat, please. Franny Osmond, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Franny Osmond, and I heard about the application both through the Commission on Disabilities, which I'm on, and also by attending the Council on Aging meeting. And I am opposed to this project. I have just concerns about the safety of sharing that location. Thanks.
Thank you, Franny.
Oh, okay, John, there's only one person. Oh, there's only one person left, and he does not have his full name in here. So I don't know if you want me to have him speak anyway. I usually only call on people.
Sure, just sir, please put your full name. Yeah.
He may not know how to do it. I guess I'll just let him talk and then.
Sure.
Charlie, please go ahead. Please state your full name. Charlie, I see you've unmuted yourself. Oh, you muted yourself again. Try unmuting yourself again and then speaking. Now you can speak. So, John, I'm guessing his audio doesn't work. So then that's all. There's no more people who want to speak.
Molly, do you have anything to say in response to the various citizen comments?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. So further comments and questions from the board. Jim.
Comment. I mean, I personally would be comfortable turning down the permit now just based on the traffic issues, but I don't know that the rest of the board is there yet. I think in any case, we have enough unresolved issues that are going to require more conversation that if we're not denying it tonight, we should definitely not close the hearing. The design review board would like to weigh in again, which would require having the hearing be opened. There's some traffic planning and construction staging planning conversations that will need to happen if we're going to find a way to proceed on this. There's There's a sidewalk discussion that we haven't had yet about money for sidewalks, since it doesn't seem to be an actual interesting or helpful place to put a sidewalk. And then I think there's also one question that was raised in the COA letter that I think we should hear about from staff, is that the original variance that allowed this site to be buildable talked about that the variance would not be permitted if it was detrimental to the public good. And I don't know if that language retroactively applies to the way that 30 Sudbury has changed its use since the variance was granted. So I think that's my main list of issues. In any case, I think and whether utilities would be allowed in the easement, which is a great issue that I hadn't thought about before that Chip just raised. So I think there's a bunch of issues that are going to require more testimony. So I just wanted to urge us not to close the hearing tonight unless we're going to go ahead and deny it.
Okay. Dean.
Yeah, Jim pretty much summed up all of the objections that I had. In addition to the list that he had, certainly the utility issue going through an easement, that's significant. And I don't know if you remember the ongoing discussions we've had about access to the proposed dog park. And so we certainly have experts on putting utilities in easements and whether it can be done or not. I think that's a major issue that is a concern to everyone. Certainly the safety issues, certainly I'd be very interested in seeing what the proposal is for the fire suppression sprinkler system, whether it can be run off a residential well. And, I want to make sure and have the fire chief sign off on that it's been designed and approved by a fire safety engineer. I think in any case, this is a very complicated site. I'm not going to make any remarks about previous experiences we've had with the applicant, but I think it's important to make sure that the plans that we sign off on be 100% in all features, including a chance for the DRB to look at the plans again. I don't want to leave anything to interpretation at a later point. I don't want to have a situation where there's a set of plans that's issued for construction, and then, oh, by the way, you should read the selectmen's decision as well, because that's going to end up on the floor of a pickup truck someplace. So I think we need everything nailed down. And for that reason, I think that, a continuance is the most generous thing we can do. And I don't see this thing coming back next week or the week after. I think there's some significant issues that have to be dealt with probably after the new year. I don't know how long we can continue this thing, but the applicant has continued it several times in the past already. So I would second Jim's thoughts about a continuance is proper at this point.
David, you had your hand up?
Yes. So I just wanted to relate my concern. So I'm not so concerned about the volume of traffic increase from this project. It's probably less than 15% of the traffic the parking lot gets now. What I am concerned about is the fact that this is a relatively long parking lot. People are going to be in a hurry to get to the building at the end of the parking lot and treat it like a street. This street is only 24 feet wide and has perpendicular parking along both sides all the way down, and people backing into this street with limited sight lines until the driver's head is beyond the other cars. And especially on the right side of the parking lot, or the Concord side of the parking lot, there's no sidewalk or place to walk that is not in the street. You walk behind the cars, or you cut across the street and walk behind the other cars. And so I'm concerned about safety things in that way. I think if this went through, we'd need some changes to the way the parking lot was structured, and there's not a lot of space to work with. Some of the things that were mentioned as far as raised crosswalks and things like that. I think that they're an excellent idea, though I'd want to understand why the fire department didn't like that idea. There's some continued discussion there. And finally, I think that 9 parking spaces is woefully inefficient, considering that there's not enough space in the 30 Sudbury parking lot now to handle any overflow from this building. I think you've got to figure, 2 spaces per unit, counting the business as a unit with the occasional guest. I think we're talking 12 or 13 spaces, not 9. I wouldn't want to. I think it's just asking for trouble to only have 9 spaces, and if they did go through with 9 spaces, we'd probably have to sticker every Acton resident who parked in the 30 Sudbury lot and tow anybody who wasn't stickered, which is an increased cost for the town, including and also increased costs for infrastructure improvements like raised crosswalks that I mentioned before. And for that reason, again, if this went through, I'd like to see contributions from the developer for infrastructure, not just adding a stop sign. I'm not talking about $200 to add a stop sign. That's my feeling. I agree with what Dean and Jim said about, I certainly wouldn't be in a position to approve this now without a specific list of conditions. I would like to see staff generate a list of conditions based on the feedback we've heard today for us to consider in a continued hearing. So that's my. I have $2. Maybe it's more than 2 cents.
Joan, do you have anything further? You're not. Can't hear. No. Okay. Okay. For my comments, I don't see that we're ever going to make this a safe passageway or a safe parking lot. So my question to town council is, to deny the permit, what findings would we have to make so the decision is sustainable in the event of an appeal by the developer?
Hi. A couple of things. You need to enact in the site plan special permit. The site plan review is actually a site plan special permit. So you do have the ability to deny if you feel like the findings required by your bylaw in the zoning bylaw cannot be met. Typically, the presumption for special permits is that the use is presumptively allowed as long as you can impose conditions to address any of the concerns you have. If, however, the board does not feel that they can impose conditions to address the specific concerns raised by the project, as long as it's not arbitrary and capricious, it can deny that application. This is a unique situation because I'm not sure, besides requiring signage, how you would really condition the primary concern I'm hearing, which is that access point through the middle of a parking lot, which everyone here agrees is a unique situation. The one thing I would encourage Molly to go back to her team and talk about is there clearly needs to be much more coordination with the easement land holder, right? The abutting property owner. And one of the things that can and should be looked at is the relocation of that easement. That's something that the property owner can relocate that easement as a matter of law. And perhaps the applicant needs to look at redesigning that parking lot for and relocating that easement and to make that a more safe access point. And that is something that you may want to discuss and consider along with a legal opinion about whether that easement allows you to run utilities there. So, John, to get back to your question about what can you look at or what findings you have to make, there are a whole host of findings. Jim was starting to cite a number of the sections that you can look at with respect to conditions and requirements that you want to make on the applicant to ensure that access is safe, parking is safe, the location of access drives, the design of access drives. That all goes towards some of the issues that people are raising as far as can we put signage up here? Can we do speed bumps? Are there other things that you can implement, including a redesign of that access point to make that more safe? It's a little bit trickier in this case because that access point is in a defined location that the town does not have control over, and the easement holder does not necessarily have control over. So that's why I'm encouraging Molly to get together with the budding property owner and figure out if a relocation is possible.
Okay, so what you're saying is that we can deny it if we make the necessary findings under the bylaw.
Correct. If you feel you cannot impose conditions to satisfy the concerns that you all have, as far as particularly when it comes to safety. You know, we're not talking necessarily about aesthetic design, but something kind of a core governmental concern like the public safety. If there is not conditions that you can impose that would satisfy your concerns there, you can deny the project or deny the special permit application. Again, the more specific factual findings you make on that front that are tethered to the bylaw, the better.
Okay. So would there be any further? I mean, I guess our options would be: do we want to deny the permit this evening, or do we want to continue the hearing and send Molly back to work with Mr. Bertolami to see if they can address quite satisfactorily, the concerns that were raised this evening? Sorry, David?
So I would like to see us continue the hearing tonight and ask the planning staff to produce a list of conditions that they can work with the developer on, which would be presented to us when the hearing was resumed for us to consider. I think I'm happy to contribute, talk with the town manager offline or whatever. I'm sure the other people on the board would be willing to do that to help form that list of conditions with the planning staff. Anyway, I'd like to see the list of conditions created, and I'd like to see the hearing continue.
Adine?
Yeah, I agree with David on that. Planning department work with Molly and with Mr. Bertolami, and certainly with Chip Orcutt or whoever he feels the appropriate representation to get all of these issues thrashed out. I think this utility issue could be a deal breaker under any conditions if indeed he doesn't have the right to put the utilities in there. But I think that there's a host of issues that need to be raised, and I'd rather see a continuance and further discussion on this than to deny it at this point. I think if ultimately we decide we have to deny it, then I think we should give them one more chance to come up with some answers.
Okay. Joan? Continue. Jim?
Yes, I think in particular when I think about what could possibly be worked out, all the variables that could be worked out between Chip and his company and Leo and Molly and their company and the town, it seems like there's a lot of options that could be considered to potentially make the parking lot safe. So it does seem wise to me to see what can happen, to see if there's a way of creating a three-way agreement, for example, between the development company and the owners of 30 Sudbury and the town of Acton that would secure safety there. So I think that's a worthy effort.
Okay, so how much time would we need, and when should we continue to? We have hearings and we have meetings in January on the 4th and then the 25th. John?
Hi, thank you. I would certainly push to have it as far as possible from tonight. And I also had the question for the board related to that. If the direction that we're getting is for planning staff to work closely with the development team to redesign or to look at project specifics and come up with alternatives, how much time do you want me to allocate of our staff time to that effort?
Okay. David?
Well, for my opinion, I'm not speaking for the board, obviously, is that what I would like the planning staff to concentrate on is the conditions that they think need to be satisfied based on what we've heard tonight, and not. I mean, it's not the planning staff's responsibility to redesign the project. It's up to the developer to come up with a new design. But we should say the conditions that we need in that design.
So, John, in terms of staff time, are we talking, going into late February, March, April? What do you think? What's real?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty busy end of the year here. And I think as much time as we can have to do this work would be appreciated. I know that if there were a decision tonight, staff would have 90 days to issue a decision. So we would want an agreement from the development team to extend that for as long as possible, both the continuing hearing and the time for us to issue a decision, just so that we have appropriate time to support that process.
Okay, so what would be appropriate from management's end?
I think a February hearing would be good.
You think that's enough time?
Well, for the hearing, and then if we have 90 days from then to do the decision, I think that would be sufficient.
But you'd have to, but the real work would be done between now and in February and coming up with conditions for discussion at that hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so what we're, what we'd be talking about is, would that be February, or we meet 1st and 3rd? Is the 15th of February President's Day?
Yeah, it's the 22nd.
The 22nd.
Yeah.
So then, shall we continue the hearing until February 22nd?
I move that we continue this hearing until February 27th at 7:10 p.m.
22nd, yeah.
I'm sorry, what did I say? 22nd is what I meant.
Getting like May.
I move that we continue this hearing to February 22nd, 2021 at 7:10 p.m.
Second.
Joe says too, second.
And Molly, does that work for the developer?
Yeah, that works. There's no way we could continue it to an earlier date and then continue from there if we need more time.
No, if you want this done, we've really got to take the time and do it right. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. John?
Is there a consideration that to move formally to extend the comment period, I mean, the decision period as well?
Well, the decision period to be 90 days from the time we make a decision. Is that?
But
90 days from when we close the hearing.
Nina?
right.
The planning staff typically has a formal extension that they'll have the applicant sign. So Molly, I think you can expect the planning staff to reach out to your team and assuming that you all will agree to that extension in writing.
Okay. So we have a motion that's made and seconded to continue the hearing until Monday, February 22nd, it's 2021 at 7:10. If there's no further discussion, David, please call the roll.
Mr. Snyder-Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner? She says aye. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's continued.
Continues here. Okay. Why don't we take a 5-minute break before we continue with our second hearing tonight?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Or I guess we're waiting for Nina.
Do we need Nina for the next piece?
Yeah, here she is. Yes, she was here right on demand.
I was
So-
hiding.
I'm sorry?
I was hiding.
Okay. The next matter is the Pearl Street tree hearing. And the Acton tree warden, Ryan Hunt, posted notice in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 87, Section 3, that a public shade tree removal hearing will be held on Friday, November 20th at 2 p.m. relative to the removal of a 22-inch in diameter maple tree located at 5 Pearl Street. Prior to the hearing, Mr. Hunt received in writing one or more objections to the tree removal, and as required by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 87, Section 4, deferred the final decision to the Board of Selectmen, and that leads to our hearing this evening. So I'd like to for us to proceed in this way, to hear first from Zur Ateas, the developer, then Ryan Hunt, and if Liz McKinley of Davy Resorts Group of Shrewsbury, she was an outside arborist who's written a report, and then take questions and comments from the board, and then questions and comments from the citizenry. So, Mr. Is it Atias?
It's Atias.
Atias, okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
So would you like to begin and explain why we're here?
Sure. Got a project approved for the corner of Pearl and Central, as everybody knows. And then just followed the approved plan. The approved plan called for one tree, this specific tree, not to be removed. But the approved plan also called for us to put in a sidewalk. When everything was executed, I don't have a lot of experience in all candor about putting in sidewalks, but when everything was executed, there was a tree in the middle of the sidewalk from an infrastructure perspective. I don't know anything about ADA compliance. I don't know, these are things that are out of my purview or out of my knowledge base. And so here we find ourselves in this situation. I met with the tree warden on site and sent somebody else from the town. I trust their opinions on what they think I should do and kind of take it from there, guys and gals. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Do you have anything further to say?
Not much. I don't know what to make of it. I'm happy to leave the tree in the middle of the sidewalk. That's okay. There wasn't a sidewalk there before, but I don't know if that's allowed. If everyone decides that the tree should come down, then I'll take down the tree and fix the sidewalk. I don't know. I'm kind of wide open and want to hear what people suggest.
Okay, then let's hear from Ryan Hunt next, please.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
Ryan?
Ryan, you have to unmute yourself.
Good evening. How about that?
Good. Thank you.
I'm not sure what to say. That hasn't already been said. It's a sidewalk built around a town tree, so the town tree has been damaged. There was never an application to do a public shade tree hearing for removal. So it was just the sidewalk was built through the tree and the roots were excavated, and it's basically doomed pretty much. and he should, if there was a real tree hearing done, we would have, if it was approved, it would have been required that he paid for compensation of the value of the tree to the town. So I'm not sure what the board wants to do with that, because he never asked for permission for removal, or if it should be kept and the sidewalk should be removed and the arborist should monitor the future work.
I noticed in your report, I guess the memo from the tree warden, you gave us, if the tree is to preserve, the contractor has two options. You lay those out, and then you also, if the board decides to preserve the tree, you set out recommendations as well. What do you think would be the best course for us?
I personally wouldn't bother trying to save the tree just because of the amount of excavation that went on. It's a fairly mature maple tree, and they're fairly shallow rooted, and to excavate to build a sidewalk, you're going down a foot or 18 inches, which is directly in and through the root zone. And the concrete was poured right up against the trunk. So there's no, even the little bit of concrete that has been removed there could have been plenty of damage to the base of the tree, and the grade has changed. And I think the tree's not going to survive either way. That would be my recommendation, but that's what I would prefer it be removed rather than monitored. And it's a public shade tree, and it's going to be a hazard very shortly, in my opinion.
Hazard in what sense?
As soon as it starts being in decline, maple trees tend to throw branches, so it'll be a hazard to the public right away, to anybody on Pearl Street. And West Acton has a lot of walking traffic, so there'll be, very vulnerable pedestrians on Pearl Street with a hazard tree over them now, in my opinion.
Okay. Anything further, Ryan?
Not really.
Is Miss McKinley with us tonight?
I'm looking. They're sorted by first name, so I don't. No, I don't see a McKinley.
Okay. Ryan, was Miss McKinley, she was hired by you as an outside arborist to render an opinion? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, and she did, and that report was in the packet, which we've all read.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so for members of the board, starting with Jim, questions or comments, please?
Well, this issue was first brought, at least to my attention, by Dean, so I'm most interested in his questions and comments.
Okay, so if you want to lead with Dean, that's fine.
Great.
Okay, I'm sorry, we should have probably done it. Dean, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I have read through the documents submitted by Ryan and by Liz McKinley from Davie Resource Group, and I've inspected the tree as best I could. Obviously, there's a concrete sidewalk poured around it, so it's really hard to assess the root zone. My general observation is that when the folks were building the sidewalk, didn't anybody notice that there was a tree right in the way? And did anybody think that maybe they should call to get a clarification on, if there was a requirement to put a sidewalk there, is that the exact spot where the sidewalk was supposed to be? And if it was, a call to town hall might have illuminated it and probably alerted people so that there could be an inspection done. My understanding was that that the tree warden was asked to take a look at the tree prior to the construction, and he noted, yeah, there's a tree there, and apparently was not made aware that the plan was to build a sidewalk all the way around it. Despite what builders would like to think, trees don't grow like a row of carrots. They have buttress roots that go in many directions. If that tree was in perfectly healthy condition, the critical root zone would go out at least as far as the branch spread of the tree. And you could probably track down here roots that would be equal to a radius equal to the height of the tree. So, you know, what's happened there has been really unfortunate. I concur with the tree warden that the fate of the tree has pretty much been sealed by the work that's already been done. I've read numerous comments from folks about, can you dig it up and move it? Well, not from any practical point of view. Is there any way the tree can be saved? In my opinion, no. It's the tree was, you know, it's just, it can't be saved. You might get a couple of years out of it, and it's, you know, constant rain of branches. I don't know if there's a plan to eventually move the farmer's market back there, but, you know, setting up farmer's market booths underneath that thing, just, you know, that would be an irresponsible action, in my opinion. And obviously the sidewalk is not accessible. You know, there's no way that the town can tolerate having a sidewalk like that within the town right away that, you know, anyone could tell that that is not an accessible, handicapped accessible sidewalk. So it's, you know, two incompatible uses in the same spot. The notification, the report from Davie Resource Group is good, and I certainly respect the arborist's opinion on this, but I think it's obvious that once the sidewalk is excavated and an air spade be used to expose the root zone, it's just going to find out that the roots have been damaged irrevocably. And so I don't see the point for either the town or for the developer to go to that kind of expense and delay this whole thing. So Ms. McKinley is a ISA certified arborist. She also has a tree risk assessment qualification, which is specific training looking at hazard trees. The tree warden is an ISA certified arborist. He also has the tree risk assessment qualification. Again, I think public safety is absolute imperative. And finally, I still hold an ISA arborist certification, which I've held for about 40 years now. So I think there's two of us, Ryan and myself, who agree the tree should come down immediately. The consulting arborist wants to take another look at it, but I think if you read between the lines, she's probably saying it's going to have to come down. So it's unfortunate, but I think there's no question that the tree has to come down. The second point is there's been lots of discussion going around about valuation of trees. And the policy that the tree warden is suggesting that we follow, which I agree is actually one that I wrote in 1991 and the Board of Selectmen accepted at that time. And it sets a method for valuing trees. Now that policy probably needs to be updated at some point. There has been some discussion about that. There's a wealth of discussion, which I just want to sort of, you know, put my point out now before we listen to lots of discussion about this, about whether you value a tree based on diameter or cross-sectional value. Some of the values that have been projected for this tree, frankly, are unrealistic. You know, $30,000 for this tree. That kind of valuation, it has to be something that can be defended in court. And just looking at the cross-section valuation method that people are suggesting, ignores that there are modifiers that need to be attached to that, looking at the location, the site contribution, the species, and the condition of the tree before all this work happened. So I think that's a great discussion to have later on, and we've sort of already initiated that with a number of stakeholders in town, and I think there'll be more discussion, but I think we really have to deal with the policy that has never been rescinded, and I think that we should go along with the suggestion from the tree warden. That's pretty much my take on it.
And his suggestion was what, $3,189, is that?
I think it was $3,100 plus a $500 fine, plus obviously the developer will have to jackhammer the sidewalk section, remove the tree, grind the stump, rebuild the sidewalk. So there'll be some additional cost incurred in that.
So the developer have to take the tree out?
Yeah. It's all on him. He did it. It's all on him.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, okay, I think I'm ready to add some fill-in questions here, which I think are for John, actually, John Mangiarotti, which is, so we started discussing how we need to modify procedures, checklists, the permitting process so that shade trees get a fair shot. And I'm wondering if you had reflection from your staff yet about, what went wrong? How is it that a sidewalk got permitted that was laid out right through a tree? It seems like the town somewhere has some responsibility for this, how this thing went wrong. So I was wondering what lessons we had to learn from that, and what changes we should see going forward.
Thank you. Good question. This is something that we've been talking about for a few weeks I don't know how long it's been, but since we found out that the tree was had a sidewalk built around it or through it. I think that, of course, I think we could always improve the way that we handle situations internally. It's something that we endeavor to do every year to continue to improve our processes in here. I could probably make some excuses, but I don't know that that's helpful for this discussion tonight. But what I would say is that we have a technical review process for projects like this project that includes all staff that are participating in the review process. And we're making sure now and have made sure for the last several months that the tree warden is involved in that. And also that we're using a third-party engineer since, as many of you know, we've been without a town engineer since quite a while. And so we started using a third-party engineer, and we've made sure that as part of the work scope that they perform, that they now pay special attention, or that on their checklist is the shade tree portion of review that look to help our tree warden and others with another set of eyes to make sure that we're all catching those things. And that, trees is one issue. We're trying to be more comprehensive with all the elements of review. But thank you for that question.
If I could ask a follow-up?
Sure, please.
I think that sounds exactly like the right directions to be going in. One part that I don't really understand the process for is the sidewalk. Was that actually on a plan? And what I think I've seen versions of that plan that didn't even have a sidewalk. So I'm wondering, just for my own education, where and how that sidewalk got laid out, and who actually, what board or committee or department ever saw it on a plan.
John?
I may have to call a lifeline here.
Yeah.
What I'd like to, my understanding is that the Board of Appeals permitted this project, and that a sidewalk was part of that approval.
Okay.
And that
That's correct.
there was an understanding with the developer through the Board of Appeals process that since the sidewalk was approved where an existing tree is, that the developer would have to proceed with the tree, the shade tree process. And it's something that they're supposed to initiate on their own. We certainly could have done a better job of reminding them of that, and I'll acknowledge that. But that's my understandanding of how it
Okay,
happened.
great. So the ZBA said that explicitly. They saw it on the plan. They said, by the way, you're going to need to have a tree removal, a tree hearing before this can proceed. Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that.
Okay, let's see, Joan? Okay, David?
Yes, you know, I agree with things that are said, and I think to say that the sidewalk is not ADA compliant, it's going to be, the sidewalk is not usable by a fully abled person. Maybe if you hug the tree, you could go all the way around it without leaving the sidewalk. But other than that, you're walking one side of the sidewalk to the other. Yeah, I think unfortunately the tree probably has to be removed, and we need to have the developer pay us for it and find them. But I'd also like to see the tree replaced with another tree. I don't know if that's possible for us to do, but I would like to see a good sized tree put back in the yard and then beyond the sidewalk.
Okay. My comments, I would agree with Dean's recommendation and David's suggestion. And a question for Nina is, do we have the power within this hearing to just order the tree taken down, to have the tree replaced with another maple tree?
Yeah, so looking at the 1991 policy, in which I believe the town has been following of late, and certainly as long as I've been aware, you can deem essentially under section 7 of that policy, if a tree has not been removed but has been damaged to such an extent that removal or kind of death of the tree is obvious or inevitable, you can consider that basically an effective removal of the tree without permission. In that case, the person who's done so is liable for financing the replacement and all of the costs to the town of the replacement, as well as doing the actual planting of a replacement. In addition to that, there are fines under the general laws of up to $500 for a violation of public shade trees. I know there has been some consideration given to whether that's a fine that can be increased by the town, that is set by the general laws. So that's a state specified fine. That is not something the town controls. What the town controls is how they figure out how you determine that replacement value. And our policy sets forth a method for doing that right now, as Dean described. So yes, I think you can make a finding that under section 7 of your public shade tree policy, the tree has been effectively removed without permission, and request specific remediation, including replacement, and all the costs to be borne by the developer, in addition to the general laws fine, if you want to impose that.
Okay. So are there any further comments or questions from board members before we open for citizen comment? David?
I just wanted to say that if the tree has to go back where the old tree was or somewhere along the road, then I would suggest that the developer be required to put the sidewalk around the tree with a shallow kind of sidewalk that doesn't affect the tree or has minimal effect on the tree. But it might be better to have the replacement tree set back. I also neglected to say in my original comments that the independent arborist also essentially agrees. She that, you know, even though maybe she was said that the tree might survive, she was pessimistic enough to recommend that it needs to be cabled up. So just in case it wants to fall, it can't hurt anybody. So even she was a little pessimistic that the tree would survive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So citizen comments?
Looking, yes, there are some. Joanne Becerra, please go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Joanne.
Awesome, terrific. So thank you for accepting some public comments. I live around the corner from, I live on Church Street. I guess I have to give my address, right? I live around the corner from this tree. And I'm very sad to hear that it's of its demise. And I would, you know, I'm not an arborist, so I certainly respect the arborist opinion that it can't be saved. I would be very supportive of the board to require a new tree to be planted somewhere in the vicinity. A lot of trees were cut down to build those townhouses, and I think it'd be a really good idea to try to get another tree planted there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Renee Robbins, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I submitted more extensive comments in writing earlier for the tree hearing, and I stand by all of those. So if I don't say everything that was in there, I still have all those comments and would like the board to respond to them at some point. I'm very sad and upset to hear your conclusion that you will not try to save this tree. And I have to say, I'm also quite disappointed with the town's process and conduct around permitting and oversight of this construction, which is not only about this tree, but about a part of the West Acton Historical District that, just by some, in my opinion, mistake about how the lines of the original historic district were drawn, was not actually included in the historic district, although anybody with a brain and an understanding of history and an eye can just walk through there and see that clearly that's part of the West Acton historic area, if not the formal capital HDC. And for instance, and this is a complaint I have about this process too, I submitted comments in writing by email to the tree warden, and I CC'd the Board of Selectmen about the tree hearing, but I wasn't automatically informed about this going to a Board of Selectmen hearing and informed of the date so that I could follow up on an interest that I, as a citizen of the town, had expressed. And the same thing happened to me back when those two houses, which are connected by a single garage wall, I cannot bring myself to call them a duplex or a two-family. Those two houses were built. I appeared in person back then. I don't remember what hearing it was, but I remember looking at plans. The developer was there making suggestions, making comments when it was the citizens' turn to speak. And yet, despite having done that, I was not informed when the whole thing went to the Board of Appeals, because I certainly would have shown up at that, and I would have made a lot of comments, and I might have even noticed that tree and the sidewalk plan on their plans. And I feel like I was denied that. And that, you know, when I get the Beacon and I get the Historic District Commission's regular monthly emails about their agenda, I'm relatively informed, but it's not like I'm going out of my way to monitor every single agenda for every single board in town to see if there's something going on. I think it's reasonable to expect that if I submit comments on an agenda item and there's follow-up with the same or another board or committee on that same agenda item, that I and any other citizen who submitted comments should be informed. That to me seems like a responsible town process that respects its citizens and invites and welcomes their input. And I would ask you to take that up.
Well, Ms. Robbins, you sent your comments in a letter, as any number of other concerned citizens did, and I wrote back and acknowledged receipt and asked you to join us and participate in this hearing this evening, and I think that's what you're doing.
I think I got that when I emailed to say, like, hey, I haven't seen anything to confirm that it was on the agenda for tonight. And when I emailed to ask that, there was no agenda on the town website yet. It only said the other hearing that took 2 hours. That's all it said.
Yes, and I think I had a communication with you on that as well, and said the agenda would be up later that afternoon, but it would follow the Powder Mill hearing. And then I think you sent another communication with extensive comments, and I thanked you for them. And I said, please join us on Monday evening, and please have your say. John?
Hi, thank you. I just want to address the concerns about the process we follow for keeping residents informed of ongoings at public board meetings. We do get quite a few comments and questions from various people every day on various topics, and we do our best to keep people in the loop personally. But since that's challenging given the scope of that task, what we do offer is a website subscription service, which allows you as a resident or a business or anyone to sign up to get directly personally emailed or get a text message every time an agenda is posted for a committee that you're interested in, not just the selectmen. We have about 40 or 50 committees that you can sign up to get notified for, in addition to general newsflash notifications and social media. So I recognize that there's always improvements that we're trying to make, and we're trying to make those. I just want to make sure everyone knows about the email subscription service and text message service that we already provide. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I am subscribed to the HDC. The problem is, for a citizen, I mean, I didn't necessarily know that it was the Board of Appeals that was going to permit that location rather than the Historic District Commission or the Engineering Committee or the Planning Board or the Board of Selectmen. So, you know, I'm not necessarily up on all of the processes and committees and who has purview for permitting this and that and the other thing. And honestly, you know, I get maybe like 100 emails a day. And so to subscribe to all of those, because I don't know which one of them something might appear at, it's a lot. So it just, you know, my comment, but I don't want to take up a whole lot of time just on that point. I just wanted to make it. Another point I want to make is about Pearl Street itself. So we lost a wonderful little piece of West Acton. It was a shady street that all of those trees that, you know, the one maple we're talking about tonight is one of, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so trees, I think mostly maples, that were close to the road and on the south side of it. And I sent a picture along with my original comments to the tree warden that shows that street was like almost all shade from those trees. And now like all of them are going to be gone. So it's really unfortunate. And I hope that you will look carefully at the opportunity for where to replace this with one or more shade trees, because those two houses are, you know, they don't give any shade to the street. So either there are trees right along the south side of the road there, and some shade, or there's no shade on the street there. With respect to the sidewalk, that sidewalk is kind of a loser sidewalk anyway, because Pearl Street is only like 3 inches long, and the sidewalk doesn't even go the whole length of the street. Apparently, I understand from my neighbors that they requested to have the sidewalk on the south side extended alongside Ellen and Josh's property, and that was declined or wasn't required of the developer, or I don't know exactly what the process was. So somehow the town approved this that had a sidewalk that just went 2/3 of the way down this short street, but didn't actually go the last third of the way to connect with the sidewalk that is on the west side of Windsor. So that doesn't make any sense. And then in addition, the sidewalk traverses these two conjoined driveways that are separated by plantings. They're not a tree, but there are plantings. So if the town were to actually try to plow that street after a snowstorm, it's not just this tree that was in the middle of it that you're going to now remove, but the driveways and the separator planting area of these two driveways is still in the middle of the sidewalk. So please, when you revert this back to the developer to do whatever he's going to do to fix the sidewalk, don't just talk about the part where the tree is going to be taken away, but address also this stretch between the two driveways. So while I'm talking about that, I would like to also make a comment about the existing sidewalk on the north side of the street. Now that's been there for ages, but it's also not ADA accessible. And it also, even though ostensibly it goes from Windsor Ave to Central, it goes across the parking lot that's, I don't know exactly what parcel it belongs to, but that interior parking lot behind the pizza place and the apartments on Windsor Ave. And the curb cut is the entire width of the parking lot, including the two parallel parking stretches of the parking lot, which is not necessary. You only need the curb cut to be the part of the parking lot where a car would actually turn into the parking lot. And so that sidewalk can really be improved on that side of the street if the curb cut is narrowed and a proper sidewalk is put in that whole stretch. There is a large, much larger even than the tree that's on the agenda tonight. I'm not sure if it's a maple, but there's a very large mature tree on the other side, and anything done with sidewalk over there would have to be very carefully planned to preserve that tree and not harm it in any way. And I think the last thing that I just want to say is directly to the developer, and with all due respect, you are a developer. And when you said at the beginning of this hearing that you don't know anything about pouring sidewalks, it's not your purview, you're just a developer, to me that's really disingenuous, because you're a developer. Like, you build things in towns on lots that are on streets and have sidewalks. And to just sort of claim like you don't know anything about this and how are you supposed to know is, I think disingenuous is just the best word. And I hope that in the future, if you should build anything more in our town, that you be more respectful to our town and the people who live here and the things that we care about, like accessible sidewalks and shade trees on our public streets. It doesn't take a genius. You don't have to know about the ADA. All you have to do is look at it and say, hey, a sidewalk plow cannot get down that, never mind a person. It doesn't, like, this isn't brain surgery here. This is not rocket science. So please don't insult us by saying, I didn't know anything. It is not my purview. Okay? With all due respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins.
There's two more, John.
Thank you.
Steve Long, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Steve Long from West Acton. Thanks for taking a comment and hanging in there for a longer meeting. I too am disappointed to hear that the tree wouldn't survive, and I think it makes sense to remove it. I don't think it was ever really given a chance, given the digging that went around it and the sidewalk basically collaring the tree. That means it would not survive. And I'm really glad to hear that the town has a policy that requires there be a replacement tree, and that there's going to be a fine. And I'd suggest finding a place to replace the tree that makes sense. I'm not sure that a tree could survive in front of those two new dwellings. given the large space needed for roots and the low survival rate of street trees. So I would just ask that a good place be found. And I am learning about tree planting ordinances, and I just would ask Acton to have a very close look at its tree planting ordinance to be sure it's the best that we can provide, and to include some of the features that we already have right now, such as replacement, and using what's called the mitigation hierarchy. First, you avoid any impact, then you minimize impact, and then one mitigates for impact. So that's all I had to say. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one more. Tara, please go ahead.
Hi, it's Tara from West Acton. I have several comments. I'll definitely echo what Renee said, and I like the mitigation hierarchy. The process of ZBA recognizing that a tree hearing needed to occur is not helpful or relevant in my mind, because the design was done before the tree hearing occurred. And the tree hearing being at the end of the design process after all the approvals, to me, is not appropriate if we want to save these trees. Whether he knows about ADA or sidewalks, to me, that's totally irrelevant too, as Renee was saying. We sat through hearing after hearing of him telling us to trust me, trust me, trust me. He was granted a permit and he's responsible. Relative to a replacement tree, I feel like that's a bad joke, given the level of negligence. I feel like enough trees to make up for the carbon footprint, to make up for that cross-section is appropriate. New York City requires for cross-sectional. Seattle, cities, all urban areas around the country. And this West Acton Village is very urban. I've heard that the tree won't survive so many times I can't tell you. The tulip tree, spruce and arling, tree won't survive. I could just go through a list of it. The arborist didn't say take it down. She suggested that the section be carefully dug out and then reassessed. And I hope that you do that. I hope you continue this hearing, order the contractor to pay for a carefully dug out, and the sonic, whatever she said there was, she has, this thing that can be done to assess, the decompacting of the soil, use a supersonic air tool. This doesn't sound expensive. I feel like we could do this. We could ask them, we could order, the town could order the developer, the one that said, trust me, the one that said, don't worry, that yes, that the town could order him to do that. And so I feel like we could do that assessment. You have to take out the sidewalk anyway. Might as well take it out carefully, at least that first section, and reassess. In the meantime, if you want to, anyway, thank you. I hope you do what that arborist suggests and reassess. Take out that one section very carefully. Maybe hire her to supervise it, since the applicant apparently doesn't know about these things. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tara. Is there any further?
Yeah, John, one more person raised their hand.
Of course.
Leslie Johnson, please go ahead. Leslie Johnson, you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's very sad that this tree most likely won't survive. But I do feel that the sidewalk needs to be ADA used by not only regular walkers, but walkers with people with disabilities. And I was wondering, I love the idea of them replacing the tree, but I'm wondering who would be involved in deciding where to put the replacement tree and to make the best decision about a place the tree can be put to be enjoyed by a lot of people. And would it be the developer's decision or the town's decision of where to put the replacement tree? That's my question. Thank you.
Dean, would you have an answer?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that, if we do implement the removal or allow the removal and get the compensation of $3,100 plus the $500 fine, that'll give us about $3,600, which could be used, I believe, towards tree planting. Certainly, there is a section in Mass General Law that allows public shade trees to be planted up to 20 feet back from the edge of the road, edge of right-of-way. So with the permission of the developer, certainly some substantial trees, I'm thinking 3 or 4 inch diameter trees, could be planted in the front yards of that property. A lot of this, I think, has to be worked out on the staff level with the tree warden, public works director, and town manager. There'll probably still be there should still be some additional money left over from that, which could be used for other tree plantings in the area. Normally these monies would go into the tree fund. And perhaps we could ask the tree warden to target the West Acton Village area for some of those plantings. As you know, the town has not been terribly generous in the past with spending town money on new trees. So this would certainly give us a nice boost for that area. But I think I would defer to staff, but certainly it should not be a decision that's made totally by the developer. It should be made by the tree warden in consultation with the town manager and other staff.
Any further comments, David?
No one else, John.
Okay, so back to the board. Any further questions or comments from members? Jim?
I'm a little bit torn. I am sensitive to the comments about how the sidewalk is kind of useless where it is. So it's tempting to go the route of going to the ZBA, having the ZBA reverse their decision requiring a sidewalk, rip the sidewalk out, hope the tree survives. But I think this is a fool's errand. All the stuff I read about, you have to, when you put the sidewalk in, they've dug down there, and the maple tree roots are shallow. They've been cut. That tree is a dead tree standing as far as I can tell. So I am reluctantly but drawn to the notion of the original recommendation of the tree warden to okay the removal of the tree, or rather declare that the tree has been removed effectively, apply the fines, have the developer repair the situation there, dig the root out enough so that a real sidewalk can be completed there safely. But I think in addition to the money that would be coming from the fines for trees there, I just want to agree with the spirit of what Dean said about how, because the town has some responsibility here for what happened, taking some of the town's tree money to supplement that money, to add additional trees either directly on Pearl Street or right in that neighborhood would be, I think, a good direction to go.
David?
Yes. Two things. When the replacement trees are put in on this property, I think the town should be involved in their location, whatever we need to negotiate with the developer. This developer said that he's not an expert in trees and sidewalks, so he obviously needs some help here. Also, I want to emphasize one point that Ms. Robbins made about the shrubbery that's planted that blocks the sidewalk as well here. So, a couple of meetings ago, I talked about foliage that had overgrown into sidewalks in various places in town. In this new development, they planted shrubbery right in the middle of the sidewalk. And so the sidewalk is not only blocked by the tree, the sidewalk is blocked by the shrubbery between the two driveways. And so I assume that we will not allow this property to be occupied and while that is still there. So I'm hoping that that gets removed as well.
Joan? Dean?
Yeah, the only other point that I'd like to make, there was some discussion about, alternative paving materials that could have been used around the tree. A good example of that is the rubberized asphalt that was installed around the tulip tree at the corner of Spruce Street and Arlington Street some years ago. The key behind that, and the tulip tree is still doing very well. The key behind that is early cooperation with the property owner. Mike Klinger was right front and center, voluntarily providing an easement for that sidewalk to go on his property to save the tree. It was very important for him, and certainly we appreciate that. It was also important that, from an engineering point of view, everyone knew ahead of time what was going to happen. And there's a little bit of a hump in the sidewalk, but it still works very well because it was something that was consciously designed. The alternative to this situation we're faced with now is that break up the sidewalk and put in some of that rubberized asphalt. The damage to the tree has already occurred. So I think it's not possible in this particular situation to use those materials. But I think it's important that in future developments, with the technical review that the town manager has talked about, that all of these options be considered early on, very early in the design process, so that considerations can be made and that things can happen that can save some of the existing trees. Not all trees are going to be able to be saved, but at least we might be able to give them a fighting chance. And there's a great example of it right there in West Acton that significant tree was saved through the cooperation of the property owner and the developer. In the situation, it was the town building the sidewalk. So things can be done. We just have to get on them sooner. So I'm glad the town manager is initiating the technical review process and pursuing that. That's all I've got.
Okay, so are we in a position now to close the hearing and discuss our decision? Yeah. Okay, so can David?
Move to close the hearing.
Is there a second? Joan?
Joan seconds.
Joan seconds. Okay, if there's no further discussion, then David, if you'd call the roll.
Mr. Carter Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner? She says aye. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay, so we're in the discussion portion. Dean, what would, as our lead on this, what would you see the components of a resolution / decision in the matter?
I think that we should basically take our lead from the very nice memo done by the tree warden, that the board finds the tree essentially has been removed or has been severely damaged and cannot be saved, that we require the developer to remove the tree in its entirety, grind out the stump, and restore the sidewalk, and that the town be compensated for the value of the tree. Calculation per the 1991 policy is value of the tree is $3,139. Plus we assess a fine under Mass General Law, Chapter 87, Section 6 of $500. And that we those monies be used for tree replacements in West Acton, and specifically ask that the tree warden and other town staff deal with the developer to attempt to plant some trees in a proper location on Pearl Street in front of the two new houses.
Okay, thank you. So any comments on that framework? David?
So that sounds like a very good framework to me. I just wanted to say, because I know a number of people have asked about this in the notes that they've sent in. I also was sympathetic to wanting to save the tree. But I'll note two things. One is I brought up earlier is that even the independent arborist recommended that it be cabled up because it's not assured that it's not going to fall down. And secondly, if we did delay the process and the tree died 3 or 4 years hence, then there wouldn't be a way for us to get the money back. So for those two reasons, I think this is a very good plan, or the best plan possible.
So, Jim.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with this direction as far as the tree hearing goes. Just to note that either at a future meeting or in conversations, I'd like to cover 2 other topics that have come out of this. One would be, how to encourage the town, to direct the town to use some of the extra tree money to supplement the 3,000. Second, we should continue the conversation that Dean has started about redoing the 1991 policy. And third, in response to Renee's comments about following things, I agree there probably should be a technical solution so that people can sign up for following a particular development or application, because they do bounce around in a very confusing way from, Conservation Commission to Zoning Board to Board of Appeals to the Selectmen. It's very complex. So I think people should be able to sign up for a particular application or a particular proposal and then be notified at whatever committee it goes to. But these are all topics we can deal with another time. As far as the tree hearing goes, I'm very comfortable with the motion.
Sure. Okay. So, Nina, would you be the one to write up this decision?
I certainly can. That's
You're okay with it. Okay. And you've got, okay. So
I'll work with Lisa to get the minutes, but then yes, we can write that up.
Okay, and then that would come back to us for final approval. Okay. Yep. Okay, so we'll do. I guess when we get the final decision, then we'll vote. When we see the draft from Nina, we'll review it and then take a vote. Then, okay. So
yeah,
okay.
Well, what I would typically do or prefer you to do, I would have you take a vote with findings and then incorporate that into the decision, and then sign so all that's left in this hearing is just the signing of the decision that complies with the vote you took. So I think you can take a vote and complete the hearing process. And then all that's left for me to do is write up the decision that you voted on.
Okay, so should we just review then what we've just decided? So I just restate that?
Yes.
Okay, so we find that the maple tree at 5 Pearl Street has been severely damaged and needs to be removed, excuse me. That the developer shall remove the tree in its entirety and grind the stump. 3, the developer at his cost shall repair the sidewalk. The developer shall pay the town the sum of $3,139 representing the value of the tree. 5, developer shall pay a fine pursuant to general laws, chapter 80, chapter 87, section 6 of $500. And those monies shall be used to plant trees at the 5 Pearl Street property, with the decision process to be made between the developer and town staff. Did I capture it all, Dean?
I think the only thing that I would add is that there's probably not a practical way to spend the whole $3,600 in front of Pearl Street, 5 Pearl Street. So I would, give a little latitude to the tree warden as far as putting replacement trees in front of 5 Pearl Street and other locations around the West Acton Village.
Okay, is that okay? Paul? Okay. Okay, so if that, David.
I move that we adopt those findings that you just read.
Okay. So there a second, Joan? Two fingers.
2 seconds, yes.
Yeah. Okay, David, call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner says aye. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay. So thank you very much, and thank you for that good direction, Nina. So the next item would be, I guess.
Good night, all.
Good night.
I'm sorry. Good night.
Good night, Nina.
I suppose we could combine items 5 and 6, the COVID-19 response update, and to discuss COVID-19 reporting.
Thank you. So the COVID-19 pandemic is continuing to require us to encourage further precautions throughout the community. The current number of active cases in town, which means the current number of people that are in isolation because they have a positive test, is 60. There are 60 people currently right now. And throughout the entire process since March, we've had 389 total people that were in that category. We sent a letter out, or it's probably going out tomorrow or maybe Wednesday, to all residents in collaboration with the public, with Cheryl Ball and Heather York. This is a follow-up to our emergency meeting of last week or recently. And this will just give all the residents, every household, the most up-to-date information about what they should be doing if they think they have symptoms, and if they know someone with symptoms, and everything that you should know, just to create a better baseline of information for everybody. We've also done other things to create a more awareness. I showed you the sign earlier featuring one of our favorite Carol Spinney characters. Those are everywhere, and hopefully they'll survive the winter. And it'll help people will be reminded to wear their mask if they still need that reminder. The state just announced today, Governor Baker announced today, that the quarantine guidance that had been slightly different than the CDC's is now aligned with the CDC's, and the basic changes are related to the duration of time which you have to be in quarantine, and it was always a standard 14, but now they have some opportunities based on how you interact with your doctor or your public health provider that you could go potentially lower, maybe even 10 or 7 days. But there's one thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned tonight is that if a member of the viewing audience or a household member, anyone has a positive test, or a member of their household has a positive test, make sure that you contact our Board of Health so they know about it. We find out eventually, but if we hear directly from the people, it's much easier, and it expedites the whole process that our staff have to do to notify it and all the different things we have to do. So that's just one note. Also, we started last week a new data dashboard. We had been updating our town newsflash message in the beginning we were doing it daily. Over the summer we started doing it weekly, and more recently we've been continuing to do it weekly. But the real thing that people keep wanting to see is the data. And so rather than updating the data with a new newsflash every day, we created this new dashboard that you can access on your own time. Just go to it, see where the numbers are today, and then we'll continue to do a weekly update, which I was supposed to do tonight. It might be in the morning, but basically just so that you have the most up-to-date information. And if there's any questions, please call the hotline 978-929-6600. And I just wanted to mention that reporting frequency to the board. It came up as a question from a resident within the last week or so. And so my plan with my internal team is to continue doing the weekly or so sort of narrative update with a daily data dashboard. And I just want to make sure the board's comfortable with that.
Yeah. So where do you get the data dashboards on the website? Is that right?
Yeah, so if you go to our homepage, which is actonma.gov, right on the left-hand side, there's a thing that says COVID-19 Information Center. You click on that, and it'll go to the latest information. Normally, what we had been doing is posting a news flash, which it competes with other news flashes because we put out 1 or 2 a day, and so we'd always have to make sure it was at the top. But now, you hit COVID-19, you get access to the most current data.
That's on the left side of the homepage.
And you can go directly actonma.gov/COVID-19.
Jim.
I've seen that data dashboard. I've been there more than once. I think it's great. I think it's a great solution for getting out the information that people really want to see.
Thank you. So that's our homepage, and that's the button that you would click to access it. And here's the dashboard. Thank you. And you can click on it and it'll get bigger. Sometimes it's hard to see sometimes on your phone, but if you click on it, you can get full screen and you can dig into the data. And there's actually multiple tabs. You can look at different views. So. And just there's as I mentioned, we had been doing it weekly to be responsive to residents who want to know. We tested this new dashboard, and we've had a few bugs this week, but I think we've worked them all out, and we'll continue to do this. It's actually real-time data that's updated, so it's exciting, but it's not. You don't have the same ability to verify and double-check everything you had when you're doing it on a weekly basis.
Thank you. Anything further, John?
Not on that. No, thank you.
Okay, so that covers both the update and the reporting. So then if we move to item 7, which is discuss potential community preservation project applications, Mark Hall sent us an update early this afternoon, and I suggest you could put that up on the screen.
I can.
And I can just go through the process here. So every year, town departments and boards and committees consider applying to the CPC for use of CPA funds. And in the last 3 years that I've been here, I've tried to bring to the Board of Selectmen the list of projects that we are as collectively considering to make sure that you're aware of them, A, and B, to have you let us know now if there's any concerns that you want us to address, or if you want us to back off on any of them. But the deadline for submitting applications is within the next week or so. So these will all be submitted in that time frame unless there are any concerns raised by the board. I can go through each, or we can just refer to what's shown on the screen.
Has everyone taken a look at this in their packets?
Mm-hmm.
So we're familiar with it. So I just had 2 points. Do we know yet what will be the funds available for the 2021 awards?
I don't have that. Selectman Charter may, but I don't have that in front of me.
And Dean, do you know?
I don't have the number offhand, but the comment I'll make along those lines is that we usually fund open space at about 400,000, which is what they're requesting. There's pretty much been a consensus on the CPA board that we should plan on making some significant contributions towards affordable housing this year. That's been mentioned on this board as well, and I understand that they're probably going to be coming in with about $500,000 in request. So I think those two things are probably going to happen. So there's 900,000. I think we usually have got like $1.5 million to spend. There's some historic projects further down that I think have got some legs on them. So I think, what I would suggest is this is a very, certainly we would want to put money towards the River Street project. So there's 100,000. So now we're up to $1 million right here. And people might have other feelings about other things that should go in. So obviously, recreation coming in, looking at something like $1.4 million for these projects, I think they're aware that these things aren't all going to get funded. So I think if members of the board have any particular ideas, since this list was not prioritized in any way, if members of the board have any guidance they'd like for me to convey to the CPC about which projects they think are most important in the recreation category, I can certainly carry that information forward at our CPC meeting, which is coming up pretty quickly.
Okay. When do you need to hear from us? Because doesn't your process, the application deadline's the middle or so of this month, then you start reviewing them in January?
Yeah, it'll be.
Because everything's pushed out a little bit now.
Yeah, it's been pushed out. Normally the submittal date would be around the 16th of November. We pushed it out to the 16th of December. So I think if folks want to think about this, since we've got 2 more meetings coming up in December, and come up with some guidance that I can portray, I think that should be plenty of time. But I certainly wouldn't want to. We're probably going to want to start having some hearings with the applicants probably fairly early in January. Our plan was to get this pretty well nailed down by March.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you see fit to put this on an upcoming agenda so that people can just come up with some quick comments after they've had a chance to think about it.
Okay.
And not even come up with a total amount to go into recreation, but just kind of a feeling that, which ones do you folks think are the most important? And CPC will do what CPC wants to do, but I know they always look to us for some guidance.
So we could put this on for the 14th or the 21st then. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we good with that approach? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
There's no objection to us. I mean, because many of these applications take a lot of work to put together. Most of them are nearly complete. But my intention is to have all of them submitted with the understanding that, of course, not all of them will be funded and maybe not all of them will be supported by the board. Is that an acceptable approach?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So then, John, announce the master grant and other grants that we've received.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited to announce that at the end of last month, we were awarded a $2.75 million grant from the MassWorks program, which is a very competitive program that the Baker-Polito administration started a few years ago, and we haven't yet been able to access this fund. So I'm very excited that we were this year. The project that they are willing to help us and support us on is related to the Powder Mill, the affordable housing at the Powder Mill Place. And the 2.75 million is to help with our needs as it relates to complete streets and supplementary improvements to the wastewater infrastructure in that neighborhood. Because as we discussed when the project came through for permitting, the developer is contributing an amount of money to help with the infrastructure connection. And this funding will help with some of the things that weren't directly funded through that, including some sidewalks, complete streets things, the intersection at High and Powder Mill, and other things that we were going to struggle to put into our long-term capital plan. So it's a great opportunity for us. We're really excited to get started on that. We're having a meeting with the state folks within the next few weeks to better understand exactly how the process goes. But I wanted to make sure that I made this announcement tonight, and I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for its support. We met over the summer, and the board reviewed the application and approved it. And I think we had a site walk of the site with a few folks last year, and I think the support shown here, also also from our state delegation, really helped get this through for us. So thank you.
Well, thank you for all and staff for the exceptional work on landing the grant. I think we were one of that right
37, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It was 35 cities and towns out of roughly about $68 million in grant. So what portion of that would go to what in supporting the wastewater treatment facility? What would the grant monies go for?
So we have our wastewater treatment plant. We had a comprehensive plant evaluation that we started to look at the long-term needs for that facility to support both the existing users and new users such as Powder Mill. And there were several things in the capital plan that the developer agreed to pay for, but there are things that he didn't, and that we were going to have to pay for through our capital planning process over the next 5 to 10 years. This gives us a certain portion of this, and that's one of the things that we have to talk to the state about is how much are they, if they have any specific expectations on which portions for which, but we're going to use as much as we can to help offset our own capital needs, both for our existing sewer users and for the new users that we're planning on bringing in from this project.
So it'll go towards the longer term. Part of the money will go towards the long-term capital needs of the treatment plant.
Right, which is money that we would have had to raise through fees. So it's a benefit to existing ratepayers in addition to the general public. And we're excited to announce more details before the end of the year on that. I just wanted to make sure we had the initial announcement here tonight.
Great. Congratulations, and thank you again for the excellent work. Were there other grants that you had to announce?
Well, I wanted to mention the police department has been doing some work going after grants, and they were successful with a grant recently for some traffic safety improvements. And as you know, we talk a lot about traffic calming and ways to slow down traffic. And one thing that we've tried to employ throughout town is these speed feedback signs. And, we only have so much funding, and they received a $25,000 grant, which should help us pay for one or maybe two of those, which is very helpful. And Corey also did Corey York got a grant the other day for a public works work order system, which is an IT product that, again, isn't really in our budget, but his work will help us get that done. And it's another grant program that I've mentioned, I think, in the past, but we're working right now as part of a 5-town region to work on the $1.6 million award we received for helping micro enterprises in our region. And we're getting closer to finalizing how that's all going to go. And we're hoping to make a more formal announcement in the next few weeks. But it's been very exciting time with a lot of resources coming in.
Where did you learn all your grant gathering skills from?
it's we have a lot of people that are very aggressive and work hard to chase these grants. So I appreciate everybody's efforts.
Okay, that's great. Thank you again. Jim.
So John, it sounds like you're waiting to get some clarification from the state. So you might not have an answer to this one yet, but I'm wondering if we know anything yet about how the MassWorks grant can play with the process we've just begun for the Powder Mill corridor. It seems like they're in the same area. Yeah, so can we wait for some of the Powder Mill planning to figure out where to do what to do the complete streets work, or are they separate?
The timing is pretty good, actually. It's almost like we planned it that way, where we can benefit from some of the design work that is going as part of that collaboration, and we've already started some of our own design work, but it should be coordinated. Yeah, it will be coordinated.
And a question for probably for another day, because it sounds like, again, you might not know yet, but just so you know that I'm curious about it. I'm wondering about the how much of the wastewater treatment plant work. It seems like some of it will result in a decrease in our capacity because we'll be adding a bunch of new customers. And on the other hand, some of it might be increasing our capacity if that's part of the capital work. So at some point, I'd love to understand better about the impact of this project on the remaining capacity of our wastewater treatment.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that I'm looking forward to making a presentation to the board on in the new year. I think we have a lot of sewer issues that, not issues, but items that we want to talk about with the board, and that would certainly be one of them.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Further questions for John on this item? Okay, so if we could move on, let's see, item 9 and review and consider approval letter of support for housing choice grant application. And the draft letter was in the packet. Are there any questions or comments? Questions to John or comments generally? Jim.
It's the sewer theme tonight. So I think I wanted to make sure that the board shared some assumptions that I have based on reading the application and based on a short conversation with John. That go like this. First of all, so I'm thinking entirely about the part of the grant that's about connecting up the Main Street affordable housing development with a potential sewer over Route 2. So I'm assuming that this is not an extension of the sewer district, that we're not talking about the kind of process that we went through with West Acton of identifying a place where the sewer line would extend and where customers would be, have betterment fees that would be a vote at town meeting. I'm just assuming this is just a one-off for just the AHA. So that's one thing I want to make sure everybody shares that same assumption on. The other is that the other assumption I have is that that the AHA may or may not need or want this particular connection because they're still in the middle of understanding the costs of putting in their own septic system and the feasibility of it. And we're trying to spend as little money as possible to understand the cost and feasibility of running the sewer across Route 2. We're not assuming it's going to go in. We're not assuming that we're starting on some big sewer process in the northern Main Street. So I just want to make sure we have that same kind of operating assumptions. If anyone has different assumptions, it'd probably be great to know about them now.
John, any comment?
Yeah, thank you. The project as proposed is to do a feasibility study and design services, but if after the feasibility we determine that it's not feasible or there's no interest in further design work, that's where we would stop. And I think with regards to the fact that the Housing Authority project is over here and there are a few properties in between where the sewer ends now and where that is, how to handle the properties in between. We haven't had that discussion. That would be part of the feasibility, and we may find that they have no interest and it would be problematic, and we'd do a force main, or that would be a whole process. But the whole point is that we want to try to get a funding through a grant to pay for this study work, since it is something that is expensive and not necessarily part of our current plans.
Okay. So with respect to the draft letter to Chris Clutchman, is it satisfactory to the members? As prepared? Thumbs up?
Yes, do we need to take a vote on this?
It'd be helpful for me to authorize the chair to sign it if the board is.
Yeah, it was for me to sign. So why don't you, if we want to take a vote, sure. So would someone move that that the chair be authorized to sign the letter dated December 8th to Chris Clutchman, the Deputy Director of Community Services Division, regarding the Housing Choice Grant application for infrastructure improvements to support affordable housing. Someone move.
So moved.
So moved. In a second.
Jones seconds.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, David, if you'd call the roll.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner says aye. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay, so our 11th item would be the board to temporarily appoint the acting town accountant. And John provided us with an updated memo as of, I think it was sent on Friday morning, December 4th, to appoint Assistant Town Accountant Joanne Norton to serve temporarily as acting town accountant through the end of March 2021. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, do we have a motion to that effect?
Sure.
Okay, and the second, Joan, too. So David, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner says aye. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay, so the final item of the night would be to discuss the 2021 restaurant liquor license fee waiver. John?
Thank you. I want to apologize to Joanne Norton, who sat through the meeting. I'm sure it was educational. I wanted her to say hello. Does the board mind?
Please.
Great.
Joanne, are you out there? Can you say hello?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate your vote of confidence, and it's been a very interesting meeting.
Well, thank you for soldiering on tonight.
I learned a lot, so I'm glad I attended. So thank you so much.
And thank you for stepping up.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. I'm looking forward to a great team. I work with a great team in the finance department, so as well as with John. So.
Thanks. Joanne's going to do a great job for us, so thank you, and thanks for giving her a chance to say hello. Good night, Joanne.
Good night.
Thank you, Joanne.
So this last item is related to the renewal for liquor licenses for our establishments that sell beer and wine. We discussed briefly the idea that the board would consider a 25% reduction, and I wanted to just bring that up again tonight to make sure that it's something that you want me to bring forward for your approval. The cost for that is around $26,000 if everyone that is seeking reimbursement is given a 25% reduction. It will only apply to beer and wine folks, not the package stores, just the restaurants who over the last 6 to 9 months have had their business hours interrupted significantly.
And this would be for the fiscal year from July 1, 20 through June 30, 21.
It would be for the calendar year, which is something that I was hoping we'd have more time to think about this, but Lisa's telling me we have to decide before the end of the month. We do have two more meetings this month.
Okay, well, we'll go. Well, I suggest, and David.
Well, I was also going to ask. I believe last time there were a small number of restaurants that went to a takeout only model during the pandemic and didn't sell liquor at all, and we kind of canceled their liquor license fee. Are we doing that again as well?
Yeah, so Lisa's been talking very closely with a couple of establishments who've struggled. I haven't heard that any are doing that at this time, but there's been some requests for some relief related to how this COVID impact has been impacting their sales, and revenues that usually support the funding that they use to pay for these licenses.
So maybe now all restaurants have at least some indoor dining, and that's why they need some. But at the time we did this at the beginning of the pandemic, there were some that had no dining at all, indoor or out, and we the only takeout. And so, and at that point, you couldn't take out liquor. So maybe that situation doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and either for the 14th or the 21st, why don't you come back with the formal proposal for us to act on?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that would conclude our business for this evening. We're back again next Monday night, the 14th. So do I have thank you for your patient efforts this evening, and we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Joe seconds.
Okay, and no debate. And David, just call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner says aye. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so it's unanimous.
Okay. My wife needs to know how you decide what order to call us. And David, because she's figured out that maybe you're doing us in reverse alphabetical order by last name, except that you're last.
That's correct.
Okay, she gets it right. Thank
you. Take her to Legends tomorrow morning. That's true. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.